Hey everybody, I'm here to ramble about old MMOs and new MMOs. I'm probably not going to say anything new to certain people that have already been in these discussions long enough. But here's my opinions anyway. I feel like some of the magic and what makes it MMO is just straight up dead now. If like in the nicest way to phrase it, I really think it's dead now. It's like you just get you start a game up, make your character run around in a world where no one's even chatting, everybody's kind of doing their own thing, and then you get to a dungeon, you queue up for that dungeon, you just kind of hang around until that queue is done, you run your dungeon, and you just kind of move on, you continue, and you just keep doing all this content until you reach the end game, and then you reach the end game, and you stop playing because you realize there is no end game. And it's and then when there is an end game, the end game is just, hey, do this dungeon that's a harder version of the dungeon you just did already, and get this new gear that's stronger than the gear you have, and just keep doing that. And then they release more content, a hard newer dungeon, and then a harder version of that new dungeon. And you just keeps going, you just keep going, climbing, 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 and it's a vertical climb until you like quit. Now I get it. Not everybody wants to chat in an MMO. Fine, whatever. It's you make the experience. I can't force you to interact with strangers online. That's whatever. But we have to admit that the magic of MMOs is just kind of dead now, right? Like I I think the only MMOs I can think of that still kind of have a bit of that magic right now with it is are games like maybe Guild Wars 2. I haven't played it in a while, but I remember the last time it was pretty community focused. But again, I haven't played in like 2 years, so if I'm wrong, then hey, it might be. Elder Scrolls Online, from what I remember last year playing it, because I play on and off with Elder Scrolls Online. I have a lot of fun with it. Like it's a big world. I get to run with other players, people engaging in the chat, people doing open world PvP. It's really fun. World of Warcraft, I haven't played that in about like 3 years, but actually not 3 years. I haven't played in about a year because I was going to play last year, but then I was unemployed for a year after I paid for the expansion. I still haven't played today. I still need to play that so I don't just waste money on something I don't play again, like how I did with Legions. I whatever. Final Fantasy 14. There's always something community there. My only critique with Final Fantasy 14, and I can say this the most because I'm actively playing this game, and there's no gap like the other games I mentioned. If you are playing if you're playing the game and you're going anywhere that's not the main town or a map where people are hunting like a boss, you will probably not run into another player. Well, the base game, yeah, whatever. But I will play some of the. I'll play a current expansion. Right now, I'm playing Dawn Trail, and even before Dawn Trail, and the people kind of stopped playing because they. And side note, there's a lot of people that's talking like, "Oh, Final Fantasy 14 fell off Dawn Trail. People are quitting because of Dawn Trail, yada yada." And honestly, there's always been like dips when they're waiting for new content. Square Enix has acknowledged that they have kind of messed up with the content cycle, so I won't say um completely like what's happening now is normal because clearly if they can acknowledge that they messed up, you know, something went wrong. But either way, there's always been dips. I don't know if this dip is sharper than any dip before. Maybe it is, but either way, even with previous expansions, I would play the current um I would play the current expansion. It's on the map, and I don't see other players. Not sure. Admittedly, I am late to doing so. I would be finishing the content like some months after it released, but I still feel like I should see other players. The only time I see players are in like the main town and dungeon queues. I mean, in the dungeon after I queued up. Um, the reason why I say it's not completely gone with that one is because I do see people engage in the chat. I just have the most mixed luck with free companies because most of them I run into, they just die or they are dead, but they have like tons of players online, but no one talks. So it's like, why are we here? The current one I have is pretty active and they chat. I do like that. But it took me searching through like 7 free companies to get here. Maybe even more than that. 7 is kind of generous. I feel like it's more. I've been playing since 2016, and the free company that I started with is died within like the month that I was playing. First month I was playing, by the way. And it just kind of went down here from there. I moved from Sarge to Zalera, and now I'm on Brynhilder. I do have more luck here in Brynhilder with active FCs, but other than that, it was very hit or miss. Um, Actually, not even hit or miss. It was straight up miss. Everyone was a miss, 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 miss. Even the last one in Zalera before I moved servers, I thought that one was the one that would stay active. Not really. Like even the Discord for it, and it's a bit of a downer because I kept seeing that free company. I'm not gonna name them, but I kept seeing that free company all over the game for like years, and I was like, man, I want to be in that. But they were always full, and I finally got in, and that was when they were just on a decline. I was like, well, that's bad. Maybe they're more active now that content's starting to release again, but I don't know. It bummed me out. I left and just finally swapped over to Brynhilder with some friends, and things have been better. But the chats in the cities are active, but you know, yeah. I guess now I could talk about old games. I've talked about new games long enough about how they kind of killed the magic. Let's talk about what old games had for the magic and will that magic ever return? Old games had the sense of discovery. They just drop you in this world. Let's use Final Fantasy 11 for example. I have been playing that recently. Um, I played a little bit of it closer to its prime, but not really in its prime because I didn't have the stuff to play it when it was like active development. But I did play a little bit of it. A bit after the Abyss expansion dropped. That's the closest I can get to the prime. Okay, but I have played private servers that claim to capture the classic era. Everybody's definition of classic era is so different, but I have played. I think at the moment my favorite server is probably Cat's Eye XI. You know, I kind of like Horizon, but not too crazy for it because I don't like. I don't know. I was playing with friends and spending all day to get like one level and then losing that level because I made a dumb error. Just it was just too slow, especially if I was like in school still and this was like the only game, whatever. But I play other games and I don't want to have to spend like one day just to go from like level 11 to level 12. And then if I just accidentally get murked, then that's it. And I guess that's, a con that comes with games nowadays and how they're made. But back then, these games were, well, another side note before I get to that point, a lot of people are like, well, games can't be like how they used to because everybody works. When it's like, why are we forgetting that adults played these games too back in the day? Like it wasn't just kids. I promise you, it wasn't just kids. Back to the main point. Um, there's, um, I feel like back then they made these games to just be longer, keep you away from end game as long as possible. Nowadays they kind of make it so it's not that long and you can just get to end game by reason to mediocre content just to get there quickly. Not all games. This is just mostly free to play games that I play. I don't even really play free to play MMOs anymore. I just don't see the point. They're all just kind of the same. There's a few exceptions where they're smaller indie games, and I won't rag on them. But for the most part, every big free to play MMO has just kind of been the same. So I just stick to Final Fantasy 14, Final Fantasy 11, World of Warcraft. Whenever I feel like going back in, I need to get back to that. Side note, I need to play that so I'm not just haven't wasted 50, $40 on that expansion last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. Um, the the one that came after the dragon. But yeah, I really enjoy these older games because they had that sense of discovery and they were made to keep you in the middle for as long as possible. The beginning is when you make your character, you're learning how to play, yada yada yada. The end is when you get to the end game and you're doing whatever there is there. The middle is the journey, and those old games appreciated the hell out of a journey. Like Final Fantasy 11 and old World of Warcrafts, man, the journey is there. Like yes, the leveling progression was slow and not for everyone, but man, it made you really appreciate the journey. And that's why I don't completely hate how slow leveling is in Horizon. It's just not for me because I have multiple games that I want to play through, and I just feel like it's more of a hindrance for me to just try to stick to this game when I can't even. Because I would just have to spend time finding a party, and then by the time I find the party, because I tried to find a few parties before, but it feels harder to find a party in games with using Discord. But whatever. By the time I find a party, I'm already like trying to grind a bit, and then before I can even make meaningful content, I gotta stop. I mean, meaningful progression, I gotta stop, get ready for work. That's just how I feel. But I do like Cat's Eye XI. Like it's not as slow as Horizon, but it's also not as fast as other private servers I've played, and it's slower than retail, as they call it, the regular Final Fantasy 11 experience. I like it because I get to level up at a pace that feels good, while also not just breezing through stuff. The journey is important. That is my philosophy now for games. And that's why I stopped playing certain games. Because some games like to brag about how much content they have, but if the content is not meaningful and fun, then the journey's not meaningful and fun, you know? And that's why I stopped playing certain open world games, because people will be like, we have 200 hours of content in a big world. Like, okay, but is it fun? And it feels like the fun part was secondary to everything else. Now it's just a bunch of fetch quests. Like, hey, take this item to that guy over there in the other village, and but like that multiplied by like 50 quests and just slapped in one area. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But I feel like old games really knew how to master the art of it's all about the journey, not the destination. And even when you completed even when you got to the destination, you're like, ooh, that was fun. They still had other things to put you back, like in the middle. Like in Final Fantasy 11, when you reach the end, you're like, okay, well, I leveled up this class. I'm gonna level up a different one now. So you switch from like let's say black mage to red mage. You gotta start from level one, and you're back in the middle. Yes, it's fun. Not everybody likes the system that they had, where you gotta level up a new. But I feel like it's no different from leveling up an alt. And honestly, I like leveling up a class that's on my active character more because at least all my gear is there, and I don't have to try to figure out whatever mental gymnastics things to move over my gear to that new character that some games do. It's a mess. So with some of these games, they're like, hey, if you're gonna mail gear to yourself, you gotta reach level blank on your new character, and then you gotta um some of them are simple. You just use a bank, share a game, share a bank. But and so another game is just like you gotta mail it to yourself, and you gotta do this and that. And screw it, it's annoying. Um, but back to what made old games great. I feel like what another thing that made old games great is a number of them were horizontal in their progression, and that is beautiful. And like, instead of just trying to climb up the ladder more and more to a ladder that never ends, you're just branching out. So like you could reach level 60, get a fancy sword that can do fire damage, and then you get to level 70 and you get a sword that can do water damage. That sword that you earned 10 levels ago, whatever number I said, um, it's still useful at your current level, and that's what I love. Like it's great. It doesn't make old gear immediately outdated by one patch. It just adds more stuff. So you could reach the highest level and you could still be using gear that's 5 levels lower because it's efficient for your build. It works. Horizontal progression is beautiful, and I wish that would come back in more big games because it's just great. It's also what made Final Fantasy 11 really really fun. Like I didn't understand why people hated the level cap increase initially, but then I started looking at things like that, and it just made me realize I just really love not having to climb. That's what I love about Guild Wars 2 and its approach to its do systems. Now, I haven't played in a while, so I don't know if things have become more vertical. But all I know is that I do have people consistently telling me that I never have to worry about being outdated in Guild Wars 2 because no matter what, your gear is still useful, and that's what I love. And this is also what makes these old games really really fun. Um, Old games are also slower in combat, but that's normal with the era that they were from. But honestly, I grew to love the slowness of Final Fantasy XI's content combat system. I grew to love discovering the world. I grew to love figuring out where to go next because there's no markers on the map as to where I go. Now, that's not to say that Final Fantasy 11 wasn't um, complicated to figure out what to do next because boy it was. If you want to play the story, you will need a wiki on your second monitor so that you know what quest to do next in what order. But if you just want to fill around and do everything and figure it out on your own, you can do that. It's just tricky because the game's not very helpful in telling you what to do next. But other than that, the game feels like a living breathing entity, like I don't feel like a chosen one meant to do this. I feel like a hero that is on this long journey and quest, and I just end up helping these guys and doing really cool things like earn the right to do. Rather than just being like, "Hey, you're the chosen one. Now go breathe through this content for a bit." So I guess overall that's all that there really has to say about this. Like, does anyone else relate? Does anyone like old MMOs too? Because I really love it. And this is not to say that new MMOs aren't that great. I do like dungeon queues as much as it kind of kills some MMOs in terms of the social aspects. It's still great to have because not everyone wants to just hang around a city or outside the dungeon for like hours just to find enough people to just run the dungeon or find a high level that takes pity on them and just breezes through the dungeon for them. So I just wish there was a middle ground. But in the current direction that a lot of MMOs are heading, they're heading less and less towards trying to expand the um, MMO aspects of it and just focusing on the RPG. And it's a little downer, but hey. I guess RuneScape is another MMO that still has its social aspects, but yeah. So thanks for watching and listening to my ramble. See ya.